Hi, I'm Paula from Happy Yoga Wales, and the theme of today's class is to do less. So we're looking at where we can move into poses with a little bit more ease, a little less effort. We'll be exploring some poses standing up, similar versions seated and lying down. And for today's class, you might need a block or a blanket, maybe a strap. If you don't have those things, you don't need to have proper yoga props. You can just have a pillow off the bed or a cushion off the sofa, and it might make some of the poses later on in the class a little bit more comfortable for you. So let's get started. So starting in mountain pose, bring your feet underneath your hips and just root down into the ground here. And then a little bend in the knees, lengthen down through the tailbone, and draw up through the sternum, but make sure you're not sticking your rib cage out here. Give the shoulders a little roll and just let them fall down. Lengthen up through the crown of the head and take a few steady breaths here. So we're breathing in and out of our nose. And thinking about your mountain pose, this is pretty much the exact position we're in when we're in Shavasana, in our corpse pose at the end of the class. So by the end of the class, you're normally relaxed, your body's heavy, you're sinking into the mat. See if you can get a little bit of that feeling in your mountain pose. So scanning your body from the tip of your head all the way down to your toes, and just notice where maybe you're holding a little bit of tension and where you can do a little bit less. Noticing where the breath's going. So then on an inhale, take the arms up overhead and just hold on to the wrists so either side is fine. So grab hold of the wrist with the fingers, you can't see them there, and then just gently pull that arm over into a little side bend. You can bend the knees here and just let the hips go in the opposite direction to your hands. Breathe deeply into the length inside of your body. Exhale. And inhaling your way back to centre. Change the hands, so hold on to the other wrist, dipping down so you can see my hands. And then reach up through the fingertips and take that side bend in the opposite direction. Again, bend in the knees, just let the hips go in the opposite direction if that feels nice. Keeping that shoulder back. And we're not pulling, we're not yanking, we're just taking it easy. Inhaling your way back to centre, release the arms. And we're just going to sway here. So just let the knees bend and just sway side to side. And again, nothing forced. So we're not kind of warming up like this. Just loose and easy. Let the heels lift as you rotate. So it's hard to find this balance sometimes between keeping the posture, keeping the length, making it safe and strong, but also relaxing, doing a little bit less and taking it easy. Okay, come back to your mountain pose. And we're going to roll down. So like we do in cat-cow, we're going to move one vertebra at a time. We're going to start off on the neck. So we're going to drop the chin, keep the knees bent all the way through, and then roll down through the whole spine, one vertebra at a time. Keep the belly pulled in, let the shoulders fall. Rolling down through the upper back, slowly through the lower back. Generous bend in the knees as you come all the way down. And just let the hips, the tailbone tilt up towards the sky. So a big bend in the knees. And let the head traction the spine so the spine long. And then maybe here, take some of those little side to side swaying movements again. But go easy. You might need to bend your knees even more here. So just let the fingertips drive across the floor, across your mat. And then make your way back to centre. We're going to reverse that, so pressing firmly into the feet. Keep the big bend in the knees and keep the chin tucked in. So this time we're starting at the tailbone and we're unwinding one vertebra at a time. Take your time, no rush. Through the lower back, through the upper back, feel the chest lift. Then the shoulders roll back, and finally the chin comes up, coming back into your mountain pose. And from here, just take one leg up in front of you, so that your thigh comes parallel with the mat. As you do that, to make sure your hips don't sink out to the sides, keep that strong mountain pose leg with your supporting leg. And then maybe reach around with the fingertips, hold onto the knee, and just give that leg a little squeeze. We're going to do this down our backs later on. So keep your mountain pose spine, and then releasing the fingertips, maybe just for a breath, kick that heel out in front of you, and lower the leg down to the floor. Same thing other side, so find that strong mountain pose leg, lift the other leg up, thigh parallel with the mat, reach the fingertips round. You can stay here if you want to. Reaching the fingertips, squeezing that knee in, compressing the spine, compressing the hips. Lengthen through the crown of the head, release the fingers, maybe press that heel up just for a breath. Keep the breath smooth. And lower it down. We're going to roll down again, so drop the chin. Big bend in the knees. Let the shoulders roll. Rolling down through the upper back. The lower back. And all the way down to the bottom. Take that little sway side to side here again. Maybe bend the knees one at a time, just whatever feels good here. And then coming back to centre, and find a flat back, so find a halfway lift here. So pushing the tailbone back, pushing the thighs back, and the crown of the head forward. If you want something to put your hands on here, just to find that flat back, then you can bring blocks or a chair or something underneath your hands. And big breath in here. And on an exhale, fold all the way down. And roll up. The spine should be warming up nicely now. And just take a few swings with the legs here. So again, just nice and easy. And then change sides. And then coming back to mountain pose. Take a big step back with your left leg. And we're going to come into a bit of a lunge here. So sink in or bend in both knees and lengthen down through the tailbone. So make sure this knee is stacked directly above the ankle. You don't want it to come forwards over your toes. Lengthen down through the tailbone, and then maybe start to press that heel back to straighten the back leg. If the back leg doesn't go straight, that's totally fine, but you still want that pushing back action. And then draw the front hip back and in towards your body, so we don't want it sticking out to the side. The aim here is to get the hips level so that in one straight line facing the front of your mat. Big breath in here. So it's our first slightly challenging pose. So see where you can try a little bit less. Do less. Maybe you can relax the shoulders. Big breath in. And as you exhale, just sink that back knee all the way down to the mat. So we're in the same position, but we're more supported. We're using the mat to help us here. So lengthen down through the tailbone, and then reach the back leg, reach that same arm all the way up. Reach through the fingertips and maybe take a little side bend here. Just like we did in that side bend, breathing into the side ribs. Exhale, bring the hand down all the way to the mat. Step the feet back to plank and then push the hips up to downward dog. So fingertips are spread nice and wide here. We're not going to be here too long. Pressing into the first, second knuckles. Really lift up through the hips. So letting the pelvis rotate forwards to lengthen the spine. And then drop the knees down to the mat. A little bit wider than your hips, bring your toes to touch. And sit your hips all the way back onto your heels. Breathe here. So just stay here for another couple of breaths. We're going to do all that on the other side, but straight away start to notice in that little sequence where were you maybe trying where you didn't need to try. Is there anywhere you can just let go? Any muscles you can relax? And lifting the hips back up, come back into your downward facing dog. And then slowly walk your way all the way to the front of your mat. Bend the knees as much as you need to here. And come back to your forward fold. And then on your inhale, using your breath to help you rise, rolling through the base of the spine, drawing the belly button in to support the lower back. Roll the shoulders back when you arrive. Taking the other leg back, so right leg back this time, find that lunge. Front hip comes back, and back hip comes forward. Bending both knees at first, and lengthen down through the tailbone and press that back heel back. So again, it doesn't matter if this back leg goes straight, we're just going in that direction. So get a little bit of work in the legs. Shoulders and head stacked directly above the hips, right in the centre between these 2 feet. Hands can just rest on the hips, or wherever you want them. Pressing firmly into the inner heel. See it. And then on your next exhale, lowering that knee all the way down. Reach the back arm up. Reach through the fingertips, and then if it feels good, take a little side bend. And then stretch through the psoas, so through the hip flexors. Keep lengthening down through the tailbone. And then release the fingertips to the floor, step all the way back to your downward facing dog. So we're going to come through that lunge a few times today, but we won't hold it quite as long. Drop the knees, come and find your child's pose, bring the toes to touch, just let the ribs settle in between your knees here. And the arms are extended out in front, but we don't have to reach, just soften into it. And on your next breath in, come and roll all the way forwards and allow your belly. So we're doing a few spine strengtheners. And we're going to start with Cobra. So bring the hands underneath your shoulders. Feet are about hip distance. And press your big toes into the mat. And from there, you're going to peel up, so lengthening down through the tailbone, peel up through the upper back. So we're aiming to go forwards and up, so we're not just pushing straight up with the hands. Elbow squeeze in, using the triceps, and then lower back down. And we'll do a few of those rolling up with the breath. So inhale, lift, squeeze the shoulder blades down and together. Exhale, lower. And again, inhale, lift, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Keep lengthening down through the tailbone. Exhale, lower. And one more. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. So you can either stay with your Cobra, or you can come into Locust pose. So if Locust pose doesn't feel good for any reason, then you can carry on with your Cobra. So Locust, we're going to bring the hands to the side of the body, palms facing up. And feet are in exactly the same position, so hip distance. If you want to bring them together, you can do. And then the forehead presses into the mat. Find a really long spine here, so lengthen out through the crown of the head. And on an inhale, you're going to rotate your shoulders back, squeezing the shoulder blades together. The same action we had in Cobra. Keeping the back of the neck long, so just looking down at the mat. And then exhale like that. And again, inhaling up, lengthen down through the tailbone. Maybe this time lifting the legs off the floor, so squeezing the backs of the thighs, the hamstrings, and the glutes. And exhale back down. And one more. Back of the neck long, squeezing the shoulder blades together. Keep the shoulders away from the ears. Exhale all the way back down. Rest the cheek on the mat. And turn the head to the side. Breathe here. Then bring the hands underneath the shoulders. Push yourself all the way back to child's pose. Just for a breath. And then coming back forwards to our belly, this time we're going to take a slightly less intense back bend. So this is Sphinx pose. So find a little bit of ease here. So the elbows come underneath the shoulders, or even a little bit further forwards, whatever feels good for you in your anatomy. And then roughly in line with the shoulders as well. Again, rolling the shoulders back and down, and we're letting the chest just melt forwards. So feel the upper back muscles soften into the back, into the spine. And breathe in here. Back of the neck's long, should be no tension in the neck or the shoulders. We're just going to hold this a little bit longer. If you wanted to make this a little bit more restorative, you could get a blanket or a bolster and just pop it underneath your ribs just to help keep you up a little bit here. Which feels really nice. Sit and watch telly like this. Breathe in deeply. Notice anyway, holding any tension. And if you've got a blanket underneath you, just slide that out of the way. Lower yourself slowly back down. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders, tuck the toes, and push all the way back through your knees or through plank to downward facing dog. Pedal out the legs here. Just notice how the spine feels after those back bends and back strengthening. And then slowly walk the feet towards the front of the mat. Hang heavy here and fold. Take a moment. And on your inhale, slowly roll all the way up. So keep the bend in the knees. Upright in the pelvis first, then through the lower back, then through the upper back. Finally, the shoulders and the neck. I always want to sigh when I get to the top of that. It feels so good. Okay, so we're going to come into chair pose. Chair pose, what? You said this was restorative. I know, sorry. So bring the feet together or hip distance apart if that's more comfortable. So we're going to do chair on our feet, and then we're going to do a similar position on the floor. So for chair, we're going to sink like we're sitting down on a chair. So you sink your hips back, keeping the heels firmly rooted, so your weights and your heels here. Squeezing the thighs in towards each other so they're rolling backwards and inwards. And then taking the arms up. If it's uncomfortable here, if you feel that you're hunching through the shoulders, just take them a little bit wider. Yeah. And really reach through the little fingers, drawing the lower belly in, lifting the pelvic floor, and lengthen through the crown of the head. Take a few steady breaths here. So again, quite a challenging pose, but see where you can soften, see where you can do a little bit less to make the pose feel a little bit easier. Keep rolling those thighs towards each other, tailbone pointing straight back. On your next inhale, straighten through the legs, bring the hands down through heart center. Take a breath. Then step which leg are we on now? Left leg back, yes. Step your left leg back, draw that front hip back, lengthen down through the tailbone, press the heel back. Option here if you want to take the arms up on an inhale, reaching through those fingertips, keep the tailbone lengthened, maybe find a little back bend here. Exhale, drop the knee, drop the arm and take the side bend. Inhale back to center. Exhale, hands down and step back to downward facing dog. So that same chair position we find in puppy pose. So from here, just drop your knees down to the mat. And you're going to stack your hips directly above your knees. I like, in my puppy pose, to put some blocks underneath my hands, but you don't need to do this at all. I'll show you both versions. So thinking about how you were in your chair, you've got your hips above your knees, and we're going to take the arms, the hands, a little wider than your shoulders, so they're at the edge of your mat. And then lengthen back through the tailbone and forwards through the crown of the head, and then rest the forehead on the mat. So puppy pose is really nice for opening out the chest and the shoulders, so getting good stretch through there. And again, see where you can soften. There should be no tension in the shoulders. And if there is, then just be okay with that. Just see if you can release it a little bit. If you're wanting to use the blocks here, just raising your hands onto the blocks just gives you a little bit more space if your shoulders are tight. Oh, it feels good. Toes can be tucked, or the tops of the feet can be flat to the mat. Again, whatever's comfortable for you here. And just feel those muscles in the upper back sink into the spine, almost as if they're going to come all the way forward into your chest. And adjusting into the pose maybe as you open it. And then inhale, slowly walk your hands all the way back towards your knees. Move the blocks out of the way if you've got them there. And just take child's pose for a breath. Lots of lovely child's pose today. So we're doing lots of opening for the upper back. Just notice how it feels. So draw your attention to that area right in between your shoulder blades. And then coming back to your hands and knees, press the hips up high into downward facing dog. Take a breath here. Maybe pedal the feet, that feels nice. And then walk the feet forward, you know where we're going. Hand forwards into your fold, and then on an inhale, slowly roll up. Keep pressing firmly into the feet. Okay, we're coming into eagle. So we're going to do eagle, arms and legs on our backs later on, but we're going to start with the standing pose. So we start in chair, and then from here you can take the arms up or keep them on your hips. It's up to you. Keep these hips drawing in, so the outer hips really squeeze into the midline to stop you from sinking out to the side like this. And then peel one foot off the floor and lift that leg and pop it on top of the other thigh. If you've got a wall next to you, that's kind of handy. So this might be enough. If you're okay and your ankles are flexible, mobile, you might want to wrap the toes underneath the opposite calf. And then you can stay there, or you can add the arms as well. So whichever leg is on top, so I've got my right leg on top, you're going to bring that same arm on top. So taking the arms out wide, bring the arms across, and then bring the backs of the arms together, and maybe join the palms here. So find whichever version is right for you. Lengthening down through the tailbone, lifting up through the crown of the head. And start to notice where you're holding all that tension. Are you clenching your jaw? Are you fighting to stay in the pose? If you are, just notice it and see if you can just ease off a little bit. And keep that support, so drawing it through the pelvic floor, through the lower belly. And then slowly unwind the arms. Unwinding the legs. Did you do it with control? Maybe. Give the legs a little shake. We can do the same thing on the other side. So find your chair pose first. So big inhale here. And exhale. And then bring the hands. Make sure this hip doesn't sink out to the side. Bringing this leg over. Now this is fine. You can stay here if you want to. Or you can wrap those toes. Squeeze the thighs together, lift up through the lower belly and pelvic floor. Whichever leg is on top, that arm comes over the top. Bringing the backs of the arms together. Maybe stay there. Maybe relax, take a bind. Whatever feels good for you. And whatever feels good for you today. So remember, whatever happened yesterday or last time you tried this pose, doesn't matter. Today's a different day. Today's a wobbly day for me. That's okay. Keep squeezing those thighs together. Let's see where you can soften. Think about the upper back. We've done a lot of work there already, so those muscles should be familiar with them now. See if you can soften that area. And just let them stretch in this nice eagle arm pose. And then slowly releasing the arms. And coming up. And release the legs. Give the legs a little shake. You're all still standing. This is good. No one's on the floor in a pile. Okay. Take your right leg back. Find your lunge. So bring your hips square to the front of the mat. Lengthen down through the tailbone. Make sure there's knees behind the toes. Maybe take the arms overhead. Maybe find that little back bend. So again, we're softening those muscles in the upper back. You can take the arms as wide as you want here if you're in the back bend. And then exhale, lower the knee. Keep the back arm up. Take the side bend here. I did an extra breath because that felt really nice. Bring the hands down to the mat. Step all the way back, downward facing dog. Pedal out the legs. And this time drop the knees so that they're in line with your hips. So the knees come together actually. And then just sit back on your heels. So we're going to take those eagle arms, but with hero pose legs. So to come into hero pose, roll your calf muscles out of the way. And sit in between your heels. So this is the full version of hero. But if that's not comfortable, you can roll up a blanket and sit on it, which is much nicer on the knees and on the ankles. So wherever you might feel as tight in any of these joints, actually even in your hips. So yeah, adjust however you need to. You might even want to take a blanket behind the knees. If you haven't got a blanket, sit on a cushion or block, a pillow, anything you've got at home. So we're taking eagle arms. I should face this way. Take the arms out wide. Reach through the fingertips. Give yourself a big hug. Right arm on top. And then bring the backs of the arms together. Maybe take the bind, bringing the palms together. Or just stay here. So notice the difference in the body and in the mind between this pose and our eagle pose on our feet. And just scanning the body for any tension. Softening the upper back. And you can find a bit of movement here if you want to, moving the hands away from the base, maybe pushing the elbows up towards the ceiling, keeping the shoulders relaxed. So any movements, any exploration, it's fine. That is encouraged. But just make sure by doing that you don't create tension. So we're trying to release tension next time. And then releasing the arms. Give the shoulders a little roll. And take them out to the side. Left arm on the top. Give yourself a big hug. Backs of the arms come together. Maybe take a bind. And keep reaching through the crown of the head so you're nice and tall here. You don't want to be compressing the back of the neck or anything. Breathing deeply into the belly. And then maybe moving the hands away, moving them backwards and forwards. Oh, that's nice. Maybe take the elbows up. Maybe you can take a little back bend here and the upper back. Whatever feels good. And then release that. Roll the shoulders one more time. Bring your hands back down to the mat and come back to your downward facing dog. Walk the feet forward, front of the mat. Last time we're going to do this. Promise. One hip, one vertebrae at a time. Take your time, still no rush. And then when you get there, take a big step back and face the side of your mat. I'm using my leggings today. So take your toes out at a diagonal, so about a 45-degree angle away from you. So pointing to the corners of your mat. And just take the arms up to make a big star. And then reach out through the fingertips, press down firmly into the feet. And see if you can feel all four corners of the feet, so under the big toe and the little toe, and either side of the heel. Make sure those lower ribs aren't sticking out. And then from here, we're just going to bring the hands together and sink down into a squat. So if your feet are too wide, bring them a little bit closer, whatever feels comfortable. So you want to find a position where you can lengthen down through the tailbone and stack the shoulders directly above the hips. And we're just here for a couple of breaths. So this is our goddess pose. In fact, this is goddess pose, but you can stay here if you want. If you want to be a goddess, you go for it. We should all be goddesses. Breathing deeply into the belly. Keep pressing those knees out towards the little toes. And then on an inhale, sweep the arms up. Exhale, bring the heels behind the toes and fold it at the hips, so bend at the hips. Keep a nice flat back as you come all the way down. If you need to bend the knees here, that's fine. You're looking after the hamstrings. Press firmly into the outside edge of the feet. And find a little bit of engagement in the quads. And we're trying to tip that pelvis forward. So that your tailbone, your sitting bones reaching up towards the sky. And then when you find that strong, solid foundation, just let the head hang really heavy. And maybe feel the back, the spine traction a little bit. Hands can just rest underneath you. If you want, you can take hands to opposite elbows. Or if your hands don't reach the floor, you can put them on blocks. You could even reach your hands for opposite ankles, or wrap your peace fingers, so your index finger and your middle finger, around your big toes. And just let the elbows come out to the side. So whatever version of this wide-legged fold feels good for you. So we're getting all the benefits of an inversion here. So it's supporting our immune system, encouraging lymphatic drainage, and soothing the parasympathetic nervous system. So breathe deeply into the belly and just soak up all of those benefits. And then bring your fingertips to the mat and just find a little bit of a halfway lift here. Pressing firmly again into the feet. And then just start to bring the feet, heel-toe them towards each other. And we're going to come down into our little yogi squat, so garland pose. So the toes face out at 45 degrees and they're a little bit wider than your hips. And you're going to sink down to wherever is comfortable. Now, if you don't make it all the way down, again, pop a blanket or some blocks underneath your bottom. If you've got tight ankles, you can put something underneath your heels. So again, you can put a blanket under your heels if you've got lots of blankets handy, just to take a little bit of pressure off that. So we're pressing our knees out with our elbows to get that nice external rotation in the hips. Lengthen through the crown of the head. And even though we're trying to find ease, we don't want to collapse into it here. So we still want that little bit of a lift. Lifting up through the inner arch of the feet as well. Just feel how that changes the pose. And just exploring these really, really small movements. Maybe engaging the pelvic floor muscles here as well. And just softly. And then release the hands to the mat and just sit down, however you need to get there. So we're going to find that same position, but on our backs in Happy Baby. So roll all the way down. This is where it starts to get really yummy and we don't have to stand up again. Okay, so keep the spine lengthened and bring the knees in. Flexing the feet. So imagine you're in that garland pose where we've just been, and then reach for whatever you can. So your shins, so reaching your arms inside the legs, holding onto the shins. If you're really flexible, maybe reach forward with the feet. But we're aiming to keep our spine long, so lengthen the tailbone down on the mat. We don't want to be up here. Sometimes you see people doing Happy Baby like this, but we want the spine long on the mat. And if that means just backing off a little bit and holding the shins, that's absolutely fine. Remember, we don't want to create tension. We don't want to be hunching the shoulders up by the ears just so that we can grab hold of our big toes, because that kind of defeats the object. Breathe deeply. So now that the pose has got easier, we had our goddess pose, our garland pose, and now our Happy Baby. It gives you a little bit of space to notice what else is going on. So maybe you were tensing, holding some tension somewhere you didn't even realise you were holding it. Maybe the forehead or the jaw, the neck. In these standing poses, we place so much attention on the big muscles, the quads, the glutes, but sometimes we forget what's going on with the smaller muscles. Just because they're smaller doesn't mean they're any less important. And release whatever you're holding onto, and just hold onto your knees, bring them in line with your hips, and just take a few little circles here. So lots of deep hip opening there. Just give the hips a minute to settle. And then when you're ready, hold on to the backs of the thighs and just take a roll. You can take a couple of rolls if you want to, if you're in a rolling mood today. And come all the way up to the seat. We're going to do a seated straddle split. So we did standing straddle splits. We're going to do seated. So take the legs out wide. And again, you don't have to go for the deepest straddle here, so whatever's comfortable. If you can't sit upright with a straight spine in this position, come and sit on the block. And when you're on your block, just let your pelvis tilt forwards a little bit. Okay. I might stay here because it's very comfy. And then flex the feet back towards your body, back towards the knees, and just let the hips open up. Hands can just rest in front of you, or you can bring them behind. If you wanted to take this super restorative, which you're more than welcome to do, you can even, so if your hips are open and you want to go a little bit deeper, you can start to walk the fingertips forward, but keep that spine really long, chin tucked in, so we don't want to compress the neck. And then maybe, again, if you're flexible and this isn't causing you any discomfort at all, you can maybe bring your forehead down onto a block and rest here. So we're going to be here for a few breaths. I might be here for a lot of breaths if I fall asleep. Keep rolling those thighs out away from your body. And even though we're relaxing, we're finding softness. The toes are still drawing back and the quads are still engaged. It's important to keep those quads engaged to protect the hamstrings. If we let everything just relax and block, then we risk overstretching. And just 2 more breaths here. Maybe for these last couple of breaths you can go a little bit deeper if your hamstrings have opened up and your hips have opened up. And just notice how allowing your body time gets us where we want to go without actually having to try or do anything. Very slowly, using the fingertips. If you're folded forward, use the fingertips to walk all the way back to your hips. Come on up right. If you've got blocks, then maybe move them out the way. And then hold on to the back of your thighs, just draw your knees in and bring the feet together. So we're going to carry on and open out the hips. You can stay seated on your block if you are, or you can grab one if you're not. Or you can do it without. So bring the soles of the feet together into cobbler's pose, Baddha Konasana. And sit nice and tall and just holding onto the ankles or the knees, whatever's comfortable here. So again, in this pose, the temptation is to press the knees down to the floor. But rather than do that, think about opening the groin out. So think about, yeah, just that really. So see if you can just spread from the inner thigh outwards rather than press down. And just explore that, notice the difference between those 2 movements. And how much nicer it feels when we just let the body be. Again, you can make this more restorative if you've got really open hips and you want it to fold forwards with a straight back. You could put some blocks or a bolster and rest your head there. I'm not going to do that today, but you're more than welcome to. Just 2 more breaths. And then holding onto the back of the knees, the outside of the thighs, just draw the knees together. If you're sitting on a block, maybe get rid of it for this next one. We're going to stay seated and stay with the hips. Coming into Gomukhasana or cow face pose. So bring your knees, so cross your legs so that your knees are stacked one on top of the other. So your feet will come near your hips. Again, if you've got really open hips, you might find that your feet can wiggle closer to the front of the mat. Or you might just prefer to keep them closer in. Put mine in here. And make sure there's nothing funny going on with the ankles, so make sure they're not stickling, so keep them in line with the shin here as well. Now sit nice and tall. Find your sit bones here if you can. If one hip lifts a little bit, that's okay. And just settle in. So you should feel a good stretch through the outer hips. Now, whichever leg is on the bottom, take that same arm up. If you've got a strap and you know you've got tight shoulders, should have told you this before you got into this position, you can have your strap handy for the stretch for the shoulders. So if you're using a strap, bring the arm up overhead, pinky finger facing forward, and just let that hand drop down your back. So either with or without is fine. Keep the bicep pressing in towards the ear, and the neck in line with the spine. Other arm comes out, so the thumb faces the floor, reach through the fingertips, and then just take it behind you so that the back of the hand is on your back. If your fingers touch, that's great. If they don't, that's also great. You can use your strap and just gently pull the elbows apart. If you don't have a strap, just doing the exact same thing. So pulling the elbows apart and imagine the resistance there. And then just notice what has happened in the rest of the body as you've been thinking about your arms. So for me personally, I just noticed that I was really clenching through my legs. And just try and soften back into it. And if you do notice that you're tensing somewhere, that you're clenching somewhere, don't give yourself a hard time about it. In fact, congratulate yourself for noticing it. And then maybe the same thing will happen again and again. And every time you notice, just notice. Okay, and then release the legs. Change that. So our knees are stacked as close to on top of each other as we can. If they don't come fully on top, that's absolutely fine. Now, whichever leg's on the bottom, take that same arm up, so there should be the other arm on top this time. Bend the elbow, reach your hand down the back. Maybe give that arm a little helping hand if you need to. So we want this, so it's external rotation, doesn't seem like it is because we're pulling it in towards us. But we want the shoulder to be externally rotated. If it flares out to the side, then maybe just, like I say, just give it a little helping hand. My shoulder's a little bit tighter this side. And then take that arm out. Back of the hand comes to the middle of the back, wherever it can reach. Maybe the fingertips reach. Either way, pulling those elbows away from each other. And slowly releasing the arms, releasing the legs. Take the legs out in front of you, give them a little shake. And maybe if you feel like you need to, because we've done a lot with the hips, maybe just windscreen wiper them from side to side. We're going to come into a forward fold for our next posture. So take the legs out in front of you. So ankles, knees and thighs are together. Roll the thighs in towards each other and lift up tall through the crown of the head. So we've done lots of forward folding with all our rolling up and rolling down. So we're going to take the seated version of that now. Again, if you want a strap, then you can use it here, but you don't need to. So you just reach really tall through the crown of the head and then just see wherever you can. So there's no real kind of pulling going on here. I'm just using that just for a little bit of support. Back of the neck is long. The whole spine is long and lengthened. So we'll take a more passive version of this in a second, but for now we want the spine to be long. You can also sit on a block here, so that helps again to lengthen the spine. And the knees can be bent too, so as long as you're aiming thighs down towards the mat, that's fine. So we want these quads to be active to protect our hamstrings. But the legs don't need to be straight, that's just the direction they're going. And then whether you've got a strap or not, take a more passive version now. So just this time let the spine fold all the way over the legs. Again, if you've got a blanket or a block, maybe roll it up and just rest your forehead on it there. Oh. And as tempting as it is to stay there, if you've got a blanket, move it to the side, slowly walk the fingers back towards the hips and come on up, right? Bring one leg over and stamp the foot on the floor. Sit really tall and just gently twist towards that bent knee. So we're getting a little twist through the spine. You can look over the back shoulder if you want to. And pressing that shoulder blade firmly into the spine. We don't want to let it wing down to the side. Breathe deeply into the belly. And then take that leg back out. Change sides. So stamp the foot on the floor, sit tall. Both feet are flexed. Well, this foot's flexed, this one's on the floor. Sit tall and then turn towards that front knee. And then come on back to centre. Bring both feet flat onto your mat. Give yourself a little bit of space to roll all the way down onto your back. And we're going to take supported bridge, so you might want to have a look at this actually before you get down. So I'm going to use a block. Now, if you don't want to do this, you can just take normal bridge. But this is, I think, this is a nice way to do bridge. So the outside of your feet come in line with the mat, and they're in line with your hips as well, so hip distance apart. And then find your shoulders and your elbows kind of rooted firmly into the mat, so the arms are back into their sockets. When you're in bridge pose, don't move your neck at all. So if you're in here and you want to look at me, then come out of it before you turn your head. So lengthen through the tailbone and start to lift the hips up to the sky. Now if you've got your block, whatever height is comfortable for you, so if you're here, if you've got a really flexible spine, you might put it on the highest version. And you're just going to put it underneath your sacrum. So it's the lowest bony bit of your spine. And then just relax onto it there. And when you're comfortable, just let the palms roll up towards the sky. And just check that the knees are still in line with your feet, so you haven't let them fly out to the side. And then enjoy this supported back bend. So we had lots of back bending in Locust pose in Cobra. And this is an even more supported, restorative version. Again, this is a little bit of an inversion as well, so we're helping our immune system. And the back of the neck is long. Just 2 more breaths here. And then really carefully just remove that block if you want one. And then lower your spine 1 wrist at a time back down to the mat. We're going to take eagle pose legs. So if you don't want to do the full wrap, that's absolutely fine. So bring your knees up so your shins are parallel with the mat. And you're going to wrap your legs just like we did in eagle. So if you just want to take 1 cross, that's fine. If you want to do the full cross, you can. And whichever leg is on top, you're going to take the knees in that direction. Arms can come out to a T or a cactus position, and we're just taking a twist here. So again, if you've got a block on your knees, don't go all the way over. Just pop that underneath your knees for a supported twist. And if you don't like the wrap, just take a normal twist here, so knees can be stacked instead. So whatever's comfortable for you. Lots of options. Block. And if the neck feels good, you can turn away from the knees to face the opposite direction. And we're aiming to keep our left shoulder on the mat, or both shoulders on the mat. And see where you can soften here. So even though the legs are maybe crossed, see where you can just relax. And then inhaling back to the centre. And cross the legs and take it in the other direction. Whichever version of twist you want to take. Letting the knees drop over. Keep the shoulders flat on the floor. And again, if you want something underneath the knees just to give you a little bit of support, then do that. And then making your way back to the centre and crossing the legs. And then for our Shavasana today, you've got the option of taking Supta Baddha Konasana, so bringing the soles of the feet together. In fact, I'm going to give you 2 other options. Soles of the feet together and just relaxing back here with the palms facing the ceiling. You can put blocks underneath your knees for a bit of extra support to make it really comfy. Or the other option is to take the legs up towards the sky. So this is called legs up the wall pose. If you've got a wall, then you can actually use your wall to put your legs on, but even just like this, it's really nice. And we're just going to take a minute or 2 here. After the class ends, if you want to stay here even longer, then please do. The longer the better. And scanning the body for any areas that you're still holding that last little bit of tension. And if you notice them, see if you can let them go. And whatever position your legs are in, for this last couple of breaths, just bring them flat onto the mat and then take them out to your normal Shavasana. Your legs are long on the mat. Take a big breath in here through the nose, fill all the way up from the belly, all the way into the chest. And exhale through the mouth. And just do that one more time. Inhale through the nose. And exhale through the mouth. And then bring the soles of the feet in towards the hips. Roll onto one side. You can keep your eyes closed here if you want to. If you're not ready to come out of your Shavasana yet, then please stay there. Otherwise, come on up to your seats. And then when you're ready, bring in your hands to heart center. Drop in the forehead to the fingertips. Namaste.